All right, welcome to the Jimmy Rex Show. I'm here today with a good friend of mine. This is Maclain Nelson.
Hi guys, how you doing?
McClane is visiting us from Hollywood this weekend. Grew up here in Utah, and he is a movie producer, director, and actor, and writer.
Yep.
And he has just completed a new movie coming out. Tell us a little bit about the new movie coming out. That's why you're here in Utah right now.
Yeah,
for the premiere,
so
I guess, right?
we have two coming out. The one that we're here in town for right now is called My Brother the Time Traveler. It's kind of like Elf meets What About Bob. Basic story is I play a guy whose brother thinks he can time travel. Thinks he can time travel.
Right.
And I think he's crazy. And my wife kind of brings us together. And what's fun about it is we got a cameo from James Murray from Impractical Jokers.
Yeah.
And he's like an amazing comedian. He plays my therapist who's trying to help me deal with my crazy brother and all that. And it all happens over Christmas weekend at a cabin. And
awesome. And so that movie comes out this weekend. And this is, how many movies now have you, because you helped produce this one as well, right?
Yes, I co-wrote it with Jake Van Wagner. I acted in it and I produced it, yeah.
Okay.
So this is my 25th movie. It's kind of a big,
25 now.
Big milestone. You know, not all of them have been big movies. A lot have been kind of small, but my 25th feature film. So.
Okay. And do you enjoy more the acting side, or the directing side, or the producing side, or the writing?
That's interesting. People ask me that a lot. I used to be, acting was my number one thing. Like I went to school for acting. That's what I studied in college. But once I started directing and writing, I kind of had this epiphany. Like after I directed Once I Was a Beehive, which is this movie here, it's the first movie that I didn't act in a major role. I've directed two other movies, Vamp You and Dudes and Dragons, and both I had parts in it. This one, I don't really have a big part at all. I have a cameo, but it was the first time I realized if someone told me I could never act again, but I could still write and direct, I think I'd be okay with that.
Cool.
So, but if somebody told me I could never write and direct again, I would not be okay with it.
So I want to kind of back up a little bit. So some of the first movies that the first movie you did was Moving McAllister.
Yep. And
tell us a little bit how that came about, because you have some big stars in that. You have John Heder and Mila Kunis.
Yeah, that was, and Rutger Hauer, if you ever saw the original Blade Runner, he was in that. So he's like a Hollywood legend. So yeah, so that's the first movie I ever produced. But the movie that I kind of cut my teeth on and like learned that this is what I want to do was a movie called Pride and Prejudice. It was a modern adaptation. And I just kind of, I really kind of jumped into it. I'd never been on a movie set before, but I worked so hard and I was working for free. And the producers kind of took me under their wing and I kind of learned some things. And then I worked so hard that I got promoted from being just a peon to like the second assistant director.
And so that was kind of how you got into it.
That's how I kind of got into it. Because like I said, I was just an acting major. But then I was like, I want to do films. I don't know any people in the film industry. I think I just need to like show up on someone's doorstep and say, hey, let me work on this movie. The producers were like, okay, but we can't pay you anything. I said, I don't care. I'll do whatever. I'll clean toilets, whatever. So I kind of really cut my teeth on that. And then the way I got involved with Moving McAllister was the same producers were going to do that, and they liked how much my work ethic, and they basically said, hey, we need to raise money for this. So I kind of put my entrepreneur hat on, and I went out and knocked on every door of any person that I ever knew that I thought might invest in a film. Yeah. And we had, John Heder was a friend from college. Okay. So Ben Gurley, the writer, director, he wasn't the director, but he wrote the script, kind of got John to say yes. And because we got John, he just had come off Napoleon Dynamite. Mila Kunis was interested. She at the time was kind of mainly only known for her 70s show. Yeah. People knew her as Jackie, but she wasn't quite the household name that she is now. So we got lucky enough to have her say yes, and she worked with John Heder and then get Rutger Hauer on board. So that kind of like...
So you were kind of the executive producer.
I was the executive producer on that, and I did what was called locations managing, which is like the hardest job on set. You're in charge of getting every location. And I was like, that was a road trip movie. It's a road trip romantic comedy. So it had literally 42 locations, something
Wow.
insane.
Yeah.
And all over the country, from Florida, they were taking this big truck across the country. The whole premise of the show was he was moving his boss's niece from Florida to LA.
Got it. That's what's moving McAllister.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I really learned like the ins and outs of that as well. But because I put all the money together, I got all the investors with my co-executive producer T.R. Gurley. We just really cut our and we were producers.
I think one of the highlights of this whole podcast, one of the reasons I do it, is how little ordinary decisions can create these extraordinary results. I mean, you made that decision. You just kind of basically volunteered to be on this movie set.
Yeah.
And then fast forward a couple, 3-4 years is when the Saratov Approach came out.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, that movie you made over $4 million at the box office, and really is the one that kind of exploded everything for you.
Yeah, that was another kind of example of, I think in the arts and in business and anything where you any kind of entrepreneurship type business, you have to be able to follow your gut. You have to be able to see an opportunity, and if you feel that kind of je ne sais quoi, something about it that you can't quite explain, you have to kind of be able to jump on it. And with the Saratov Approach, I was friends with the guy who had written the first draft and directed it, Garrett Batty, and he came to me, and my friend Jake Van Wagner, who had produced it as well, said, "Hey, we've got this. We know you have raised money for movies before. What do you think of this?" And I read the script, and I learned all about the story of the true story of these two guys that got kidnapped. And I just said, I have to be involved with this story. And
tell a little bit. The story is
so in 1996, two American missionaries they were serving a mission for the LDS Church got kidnapped in Russia and held for ransom, and it made international news. And it's not a spoiler alert because everybody knows they got released, but nobody knew the story of what happened. And the story was actually very miraculous. If you guys want to see that, definitely go to Amazon Prime.
Yeah, we'll link all of your videos to this podcast because Saratov Approach. I mean, I remember I went to the theater to watch it with my buddy Travis, and we kind of walked out like I was going almost as a favor to you. All I knew is that you did it, and we walked out like, dude, that's one of the best movies I've seen all year.
Yeah,
and we both got really excited about it. And I mean, fast forward, which is kind of funny because we went to an Angels baseball game a few months later. And I just asked what you were working on next. You had this movie coming out called Girls Camp, or you had written, and you were kind of trying to get the money together. Yeah. And that's when I, decided. I read the script, and what I love about your movies, even though the Saratov Approach is about two LDS missionaries, and Once I Was a Beehive, which was originally called Girls Camp, is about it's about girls camp, and the beehives go out to the little summer camp or whatever. Is you don't try to push religion in people's faces. And I think that when I read the script for Once I Was a Beehive, I said, I want this movie to be made. Because what it shows is how in the community, any religious community, and in particular here in Utah, LDS and non-LDS, it's basically a Catholic girl. And I'm just going to kind of explain why it mattered to me, because I ended up producing the movie, executive producing it with you. And so why it mattered to me is I have so many nieces that, and I read it and I was like, this is exactly how they should be treating each other. You don't try to baptize her in the movie. You don't make this miraculous conversion story. You simply show how this Catholic girl who loses her dad ends up going to a Mormon girls camp and how that relationship intertwines. And I thought it was awesome. And that was kind of the result of what came of it is the reviews came out and everything else, and kind of let you talk about that a little bit. But that was kind of the feedback that everybody, Salt Lake Tribune and everyone else.
No, it was very important to me to have this be just a true story that focused on the similarities that we have with each other, even if you have different faith or no faith. One of the girls in this she's very much struggling with her faith, and she was raised a certain way, but and it also likes to. I also like to show that sometimes religions, we try to have the monopoly on happiness and the monopoly on just, the way to do it. And we also don't think that we can learn anything else from anybody else. So this movie kind of shows that everybody, no matter what you believe, you have a lot to learn from other people if you're just willing to listen and observe, and like the connection between humans is more important than the differences that we have between us. So yeah, the reviews we get on this are so, you know, humbling, and like, especially because you go into like I sometimes get lured in by like the reviews on like the user reviews like on Netflix to see what people think.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It's overwhelming, you know, the people that were like, hey, I stumbled on this, I knew nothing about the Mormon church, or I'm not religious at all, but I love this movie because it didn't try to bash. It told a story, it didn't try. The people happened to be religious, they happened to be Christian or Mormon, but it wasn't trying to like push me in a certain way, just telling a story and allowing kind of those feelings to be there.
Yeah, well, and I think even with Saratov Approach, kind of backing up to that one you told more of a true story.
Yeah.
And so there, you know, there were some things about that. And so, what was the hardest part as you were, you know, got into making these movies? Now you've had some success with multiple movies. What's been the hardest part of the struggle for you, or what was? Because I mean, people see now and, you know, like, wow, he's got, you know, he's making money, he's doing this thing, he's got these movies coming out. But what in the beginning, what was it like? I mean,
you know, it is still a struggle, you know what I mean? Because anytime you work in an industry where you only take home what you kill, you know what I mean? I don't have a paycheck every 2 weeks. You know, if a movie doesn't do well for me, I don't eat. You know, I can't pay my rent. And so I have to do so many different jobs, so many different things to keep them in the air for the one thing that really kind of hits and takes you to a level above. So, I mean, I still feel like I'm in this kind of like, I'm above, you know, like I'm above the first filmmaker plateau, because that's a big, you know, big hurdle. But then there's this middle area where you still have to stay relevant. You still have to, you know, to get over the next hurdle. So, I mean, I still feel every day, should I stop being a filmmaker? Should I quit? You know what I mean?
Well, and I appreciate that honesty, because I think so many people are like, you know, they just assume like you've got it made or whatever else. And so, and how do you
and they assume that, you know, if a movie does a couple $1 million in the box office, that means it all goes to me. Whereas it's, you know, it's kind of depressing how many different hands reach into the pot before we're literally the last people to get paid.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have ever invested in this movie had I known how many hands actually get. And we've made money. You know, it's been a positive experience. We made money on it.
Yeah.
But even then, it was like so much had to go right.
Exactly.
And we didn't get rich off it. I can say that.
We didn't get rich. Know. People think I did because they see the grosses. They see the, you know, but like, you know, we have to keep going. But you know, the thing is you get so much. You get so much joy, you get so much like enrichment from when people come up to you and say, this changed my life.
Right.
Like I have had so many people, just an email the other day saying, you know, this character right here, she kind of has anxiety and she has a dog that's like her anxiety dog. And we had this little boy come up to us and say that I'm Phoebe, but I'm a boy. I'm like her, but like, and watching this movie was something that helped her get over, helped him get over his own father's passing.
Wow.
And we hear the stories like this all the time. We have people that said, hey, I was not religious at all, and I had no faith at all, and this helped me, you know, want to have faith again. On the Saratov Approach, people come to me and said, you know, I went on a mission. I wasn't going to go, but this one scene where you talk about these two elders, one saying I never wanted to go, like seeing that on a big screen made him feel like, hey, it's okay if I didn't want to go. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to have those feelings. You know, I think the key is if you're willing to be vulnerable with your stories, with your characters, that's where people really relate to, because
really connect to that.
Because if you're just putting on this front that everything's great and you know, filmmaking's the best and everyone should do it, and I love being, you know, in Hollywood. Like, I think every day I should move, I should leave, you know. And when I talk to students, you know, like I say, if there's anything, if you can see yourself doing anything else but filmmaking, do that. You know what I mean? Like, you only do this if it's literally the only thing you see yourself doing.
So having this much of a struggle, what is it? What is your why? What's your path? Like, what is it that gets you to keep pushing and working so hard on it?
I just think it's so important for stories to be told. Like, if I think that we have to keep that going. We have to have a diversity of thoughts. We have to have a diversity of filmmakers. We have to have, we just have to, we have to keep, storytelling has always been a part of humanity. You know, you used to sit around a fire and tell stories, and that was your movies.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and it changed to books and literature and all this. So, you know, if we don't keep doing it, that, you know, it's going to go like, everyone's just going to be watching, I don't know,
more
2-minute prank videos. Not that that's bad, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think there's an art form to it.
For sure.
And if you I just get so much kind of joy out of telling a great story. I also get joy of making money from that. But, you know, you have to really put in your hours. If someone thinks they're going to come out of film school and just be instantly Steven Spielberg without putting in their, you know, 10,000 hours or whatever, you know, like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to hear this grind that you've had to really, you know, I mean, you've been in for 10, 15 years now.
It's been like 12 years now. 12 years, and, you know, I'm just now feeling like I kind of know what I'm doing, and I've made every mistake in the book. And
we talk about a couple of those early mistakes, because you lost a lot of investors' money early.
Tell about one that's like still like this pain in my chest, because we made this movie called Dudes and Dragons, and it's so fun. Audiences love it. It won Best Film at Dragon Con, and like Dragon Con is like almost as big as Comic-Con. And it's all the like fantasy people. The movie is like Princess Bride meets Willow. You know, two of my favorite movies from growing up. And the movie turned out really fun, really funny, and people loved it. And we had a couple people, like stars of people. We had James Marsters, who was in the Buffy series. You know, we had some people in it. But for some reason, the market, the buyers, they didn't like it. They thought it was too jokey, and they didn't think they could sell comedy. And that year at the foreign sales market, which usually was our bread and butter, they just said, nah, we don't want it. So we got a small like domestic distribution, and the movie's like kind of gaining some steam now. But it literally was like, we got all dressed up for prom, and the date was supposed to come pick us up, and the doorbell never rang. So, you know, I kind of have hope that if I, you know, the longer I'm in this business, and when I have a hit that's like bigger and people like say, oh, wow, where'd this guy come from? Most of the time when someone comes out of nowhere, you really can look back and say, oh, he's been really busting it.
You've had 5 or 10 other movies that no one had ever heard of before, right?
So my secret hope is that movie will be my kind of like the one that people look back and say, oh, but have you seen his early one? So yeah, that one, it's just, you know, and it was dear to my heart, something I wrote and co-wrote with and co-directed. And
so did you lose the investors' money on that? Did you have to talk to them?
I had to tell them. The one problem is that the budget ballooned. Because we shot the whole thing on a green screen, because it was winter time and we wanted to shoot it, and we had a VFX house that basically felt pretty confident that they could kind of create the surroundings, and as long as we shot it technically, that they could create the rest of the surroundings and create the dragon and all that stuff. And no movies do this unless they're like the movie 300, you know, and has like $300 million budget. But we were doing it for like, we were trying to do it for like way under $1 million. So we finished shooting the movie on this green screen. The company that said they could finish the graphics just said, I'm sorry, we can't do this. It's going to take too long, and for the budget, we just can't do it. So we had to go to another company. They said they could do it. We basically, same thing happened 4 times in a row, and every time was like 9 months of lost time. So, and the budget grew, because when we came to a new person, they didn't care what money we lost. So we went to Kickstarter, and we raised another $200,000. And it was, you know, people wanted to see it. You know, the trailer was really good, and, you know, so people wanted to get it out there. But by the time that we got it finished, the budget had basically almost doubled from what it was originally. And then when it was finished, like we said, we got kind of just stonewalled by the foreign sales. And it just was a gut punch. It's still a gut punch. And,
Sure,
you know,
I can feel that.
I had to say to people like, hey, I mean, we always say, I said to you, you could lose it all. Don't put this money in here unless you can afford to lose
between me and, Trav, we raised the majority of the money for the movie.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, if this movie isn't good, we're going to lose all of our money.
Yeah.
Like, and I went and watched all your previous experiences. And that's one of the reasons why I know you're open to talk about this, because I asked you, I said, well, have you ever lost money on a movie before? And you brought up the Dragon movie, and then you also brought up Vamp U.
Yeah, Vamp U was a similar situation. The budget didn't balloon out of whack as much as we thought it did, but it was kind of one of those things where the market decided we don't want any more vampires movies. It was like right during the midst of the whole Twilight thing, and we won a bunch of awards for that one, and that's still a very funny movie that people kind of stumble upon. I still have people that email me and say, this is my favorite movie, Vamp U or Dudes and Dragons, but yeah, we got to the market. And so what I really learned from that is, and those we were kind of like saying, okay, people are liking vampires right now, let's do something in that, we're trying to reverse engineer.
Sure.
And I actually believe now, especially from those two kind of missteps, that you can't try to chase what's been happening, or you can't try to be like, everybody's loving this, let's jump on that. You really have to be true to kind of your gut and say, okay, I'm going to do this. People thought I was crazy for making the Saratov Approach.
Right.
Because it's like, at the time, it was like, well, there's no market for this. Like, who cares about Mormon missionaries? Like, outside of this little bubble, nobody outside is gonna like it. But when I talked to the director, and I was really grateful to him, because he actually allowed me to do a rewrite on the script with him.
Okay.
And we kind of like wrote the draft that was shot together, and I got a script consulting credit on it, and it was really good experience. And because what I liked the story, but it needed a little bit more like Hollywood to it. It needed a little bit more like action to it. And I felt like that was all there, but I think at first, the producing team, we were a little bit nervous about like, how is the audience going to react to a missionary holding a gun, or a missionary like beating someone up on screen? And we were worried about how people would react rather than following our own gut, where our own gut was saying, no, if I would be okay seeing this, and if this would be something that I would be like moved by on screen, then there's going to be an audience that feels that way too. So we kind of really learned, like, let's trust our gut on this. Let's really go back to what is real in the story. And like literally 95% of that movie is like, when we were in doubt, we went back to what really happened. So it was kind of this example of us saying, okay, no one says this is going to work, but we really feel it. So, and following that was, I think, one of the reasons why it worked. Once I was a Beehive, similar thing. People told us, what are you doing? You just like did this, you did this big movie. You did so great with kind of this action thing. You're going to now go to like a family comedy about girls at summer camp. What do you know about girls at summer camp?
Right.
And I was like, well, I don't know much, but I feel like I had a story that came to my mind about this, and it was like related to like my life personally, because my mom had been a camp counselor for years, and like the main camp counselor is based on her.
Oh, okay.
So like, and I felt like this was like a group of women that had been kind of underserved in the media. These moms and young girls that work really hard to kind of like have these amazing experiences and help each other out. Like, nobody serves them in the media. They can't look on the screen and be like, that's like me. You know what I mean?
You told me that when you first talked to me about the movie.
Yeah.
You said, I want to give a voice to these women in the church, or like some of these camp counselors and some of these people that have never really been portrayed in any of the movies. That was important to you.
Yeah, it's been, it's been a very male, films in general are very male dominated.
Yes.
You look at any posters, even ones that have a strong female lead, like it's like so awesome that Wonder Woman is doing great. But you look at everybody else in the movie, it's like one awesome woman and then like 10 other Avengers, or sorry for you comic book people, like Justice League. I know that's different from Avengers. So, but it's like Wonder Woman and like 5 other dudes.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I just was like, hey, this is gonna be cool to do a movie that's like for these young girls and for these people, and it actually, like, what makes me so happy is that grown men that have daughters, grown men that have, that are good husbands, they've come to me and they've really liked this movie. Because I made it, I was like, I'm not going to make a movie that I wouldn't personally like either.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to make it like just pure kind of like, to excuse the pun, camp.
Sure.
Pure campiness.
Yeah,
I wanted to make it something that I would sit down and enjoy.
That's great. So did you, I mean, I can tell how passionate you are about the movie making process. Was that something when you were young then, you kind of said, I'm going to be an actor, and then you kind of had you talked about your evolvement into the actual movie making process. But at what age were you like, or like as a kid, how were you when you were a kid? Tell us an example of something that you did as a kid.
That's really interesting. So I always loved performing. Like, in the first grade, I was Bambi, and in the school play, and I was horrible, but it was fun, and I like just ran around like sniffing the air, like no lines. But then I was like, I played Sebastian in Little Mermaid,
really
and I was like, I was in Hansel and Gretel, and then I was in like, I was the Tin Man, and then like I love doing plays. I would play Willy Wonka, was like the highlight of my 4th grade.
Okay.
So I always loved acting. Once I got to high school, I kind of got too cool for acting because I played football, and I was kind of like, I'm not going to be an actor.
Yeah,
I
played
guy. Football. I didn't really like, I was friends with the football guys, and none of them did theater. So like, I did one play my senior year because it was Hamlet, and I love Hamlet, and like I was a really small part because I wasn't a part of the theater group, and it was like, well, you're kind of an outsider. But I always did movies in high school. I was part of the student government, and we would make these announcement videos. And it was kind of the first year that, I graduated in '98, so I'm aging myself a little bit.
That's okay.
But it was the first year that like they shifted from like normal announcements over the intercom, or like all the skits and sketches were just like pre-recorded, people on stage doing these skits. And we decided we're not going to do that. We're going to make movies. And so I started my filmmaking then, kind of really got into it. But I kind of grew up at a time where most people were saying, you can't make a living doing acting or film. You got to do something real. I think now for kind of the millennial generation, they're kind of told a little bit more like, you can be whatever you want. Yeah. Like follow your dream at any cost, But I'm kind of like the Gen X, like end of Gen X, kind of like this cusp. We're the same.
Yeah. I think if you were born now, like where you were a millennial now, you probably would have just been a YouTube star.
Yeah, I would have just like I wouldn't have been like worried about So my freshman year, I took all these science classes. I took all I was like pre-med, and because I was like I can't be an actor. It was a fun hobby, but I can't do it for a real life. But then I took this, I ended up taking an acting class just for fun, because I was like, well, I still like it in college. And I had a teacher that I loved. Her name's Barta Heiner. She's actually in this movie, and she's in my new movie that I produced called Little Women, which we should talk about a little bit. But, her and a couple other people, like, just really kind of encouraged me to, like, just see how it goes. You can always change your major later. But like they gave me a scholarship to be in the acting program, so because I auditioned for it and I won the scholarship. So I was like, well, I'll just do this, take all the other core classes I need, and then I'll change my major later.
Sure.
And then I never did. And it was really kind of, I served an LDS mission, and I realized there, I was on my P days, we were making movies. One of the elders had a camera, and we were making movies every P day. That's what I did. And I just realized, I love this so much. If I don't try to do this for my career, I will just be so upset. And if I at least don't like give it my all, then, if I did that and things didn't work out, and then I would have been fine at least, because I at least tried it.
Yeah, you would have known that you...
But I would have known I wasn't cut out for it. But so I ended up getting my degree in acting, and it was like the end of my senior year that I volunteered to be on the Pride and Prejudice movie, and that kind of changed my trajectory, because that's when I learned, and this is the advice, I don't know if there's any aspiring filmmakers.
There's so many lessons to take out of this already, but please.
Aspiring filmmaker, one thing, I don't like bashing on millennials, because I love millennials. They're my sisters, they're my brothers, you know what I mean? Like, but what you do see like a culture shift where they're more apt to believe that they can do whatever they want, but they're a little less willing to really put in the hard work and the hard hours that it takes. They feel like maybe, when you've been buoyed up like that and told you can do this, you're the man, like, you don't want to show up to set and have to clean the toilet. You want to be like calling the shots. You want to instantly.
I'm the talent. I'm not cleaning the toilet.
Yeah, so I've seen less and less this kind of like real drive, and they're out there. And the people that are the young kids out there that are really like doing it and going out and getting jobs. And I mean, the young guys here that are shooting this, like, I can tell they've got some oomph to them. You guys are probably 18? You look like babies. You know what I mean? But they're like.
It's all I can afford at this point.
Yeah,
for the
exactly.
podcast.
But they're out and they're doing it. You know what I mean? Like those are the people that are gonna really be successful. And
it's like, they're literally in high school still. Right? I'll give you an idea. And so it's rare to have some kids that are that ambitious, is what you're saying. And there's no doubt in my mind these guys are going to be making amazing videos within 4, 5, 6 years.
And that's rare. That's rare though, to see that kind of like real hard work ethic. Yep. And so that's kind of my that I tell anyone, like, if you want to do this, you really got to. College is the time to seek out people that are doing work that you like. And if you see a movie that people like, you look up who's in it, you look up the IMDb, you find out what they're doing next, and you go find them and you volunteer to work on their movie. Nobody's going to say no to a free intern. Nobody's going to say no to free help doing whatever. And even, it doesn't matter if you're like, running errands or doing what, as long as you do your job your best, whatever it is, the little thing you do, taking out trash. Literally, as a location manager, you just, half the time you're spent taking out trash, and it sucks.
Yeah.
But if you do your best at that job, people notice it, and you will rise through the ranks. You just got to be okay with not being the top dog right away. There's a kid named, he's not a kid anymore, but he's a man named Kurt Knight, who I work with, and I actually coached him in football when he was a freshman. I was his football coach. And then years later, he came to work for our we have a company, not a side company, but a different company than my other films, that does mainly all fantasy films.
Right.
And for years, he was literally, we call him our helper monkey, because he just like did whatever we needed, but he just paid his dues, and he worked on his craft. And now he's directing movies and TV shows for our company because he put in his time. And he learned it, and we gave him, when he got the chance, he did a great job. So
and I think it's such a powerful lesson, is that ability to understand that you're not going to be at the top today, right? When I know when I got into real estate, it was very similar in the sense that, I mean, I didn't know, I was thankful back then. All I knew I needed to hustle. I had people telling me like, you're not going to make it, or this ain't going to happen. So I was like, well, I'll show you, and I just grinded and grinded. And I remember I had a guy want to come work for me. It's pretty funny. And he very confident, same kind of thing, right? He was very, very sure of himself, and he came in and watched me call for sell by owners in I had a prospecting booth. Yeah. I mean, and you got to understand, I would be put on national stages to call for sell by owners. That was my art. I was the guy for sell by owners. He didn't know this, so he comes in and he listens to me for an hour, and I think I set 2 or 3 appointments, which is a phenomenal hour, right? Yeah. And he literally says to me in that moment, he goes, well, just imagine if you're this good at it, just imagine how good I'm going to be at it. And I was like, you know how offensive that is, right? But I didn't say anything. I said, okay. Well, he went out on his own, and the next day came in, I gave him his stack of for sale by owners, and he didn't make it 1 hour. And he literally came back after an hour. I told him, go call for an hour, we'll talk about it. Yeah. And he looked at me, and I could tell it had broken his soul because he was just not willing to be the peon. And he literally said, he goes, I can't believe the way they talk to me. Like, almost like, do they not know who I am? And he left. He goes, I'm going to go get a drink. And I said to my assistant, I go, he's never coming back.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He never came back. That was the last time I ever saw him.
No, we see that all the time. We see guys that come in, they think, oh, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how, and I've written these, and it's just like, if you can't take the low stuff, you're not going to be able to. Nobody's going to give you the chance to go. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I don't think that it's like there's something about the universe. It doesn't let you get to the top without going through that, because I think you won't appreciate it if you do. Well, it's pretty. Also, coming up next, you talked about Little Women. Talk about that a little bit. What's the next project, and why did you choose? Why'd you go into those?
My wife is an exceptional screenwriter. Her name's Claire Niederprum, and she's great. And
actor.
She's a great actor, yeah. She was in Once I Was a Beehive. She played the character Bree. She's in a movie called Thirst. That's amazing, where she's the lead in that. She's in Zombie Hunter. She's in a Nocturne. She's the lead in like 6 or 7 movies. But she's decided to kind of get into writing. And she wrote a couple scripts. And it's hard when you work with your wife.
Yeah, I imagine. So
because she's like, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to ask you about that, like how that is, because you do work with her a lot.
Well, it's like, you're married, so you have that relationship, and then it's like a work relationship on top. So sometimes I'm her boss. Like when I'm her director, I'm her boss, and she has to listen to me, even though at home,
you have to listen to her.
I have to listen to her. It's more, so it's more kind of like equal there. And sometimes it's not equal in the workplace. So like when I tell her, you need to do it the way I want you to do this, she'll like dig in a little bit, but then she realizes, okay, I got it. I got to be the... In this case, I do have to listen to you as my director. Yeah. But she had been writing several scripts and kind of wanting one of the projects that I did next to be something that she wrote, and so we could produce one of her scripts. And that's the other hard part too, is that I've learned as a filmmaker, I have to be as scrutinous of anybody's script, even if it's somebody I love and care about. Yeah. Even if you sent me a script and you're like, we've been friends for 10 years now.
The moment I actually gave you the money for Once I Was a Beehive is I asked if I could be in it, and you said probably not because you're not a professional actor.
Yeah.
It's like, this guy literally just told me he can't make the movie if I don't cut this check, and here he is telling me to go to hell, you're not in my movie.
Well, it's like...
But it was like, I actually respected it as a business guy. I was like, I like this because that means he's honoring like the value of what he's doing.
It's kind of like if you have some surgery that you need done, and if I'm like, hey, I've always been interested in surgery. Do you mind if I just remove that mole for you? It's just you know what I mean? Like, no, you're not going to go to me for that because that's not what I'm trained to do. So like, people ask me, can I be the lead? And it's like, well, I mean, if you pay enough, yes, but the movie's not going to be good. And you know what I mean? Like, So, but I'm usually like, I won't make any choice that I think is going to hurt the movie as a whole. And I won't start down the road of a script that I don't think is ready to shoot. With Saratov Approach, same thing. I love the concept, but I didn't think it was quite ready to shoot until we really dug deeper and like kind of like really made those changes and strengthened what he already had there, So when Claire had brought me a couple different scripts, she'd written like 3 different scripts, and I read them and I wanted to love them, but I was just like, well, I don't hate it, but like this is what I feel is off with this. And sometimes the writing's just fine, but the story, I don't feel like it's the right thing to do right now. So she was getting pretty frustrated because she's like, well, am I even a good writer? Like, I've written all these scripts. You're not interested in doing any of them. And one day we were in the car and I said, okay, well, those other ideas aside, talk to me about the top 5 things that you would be interested in doing. Because I want to pick something that I'm equally interested in so that we,
Yeah, sure.
And she rattled off a couple, and then she said, and then I have this idea of, I love the story Little Women. I was in the musical in college, and I've loved that story, and I've always wanted to do a modern adaptation of this book. And she kept going. She's like, well, and I said, just stop right there. That's the idea. That's what we're doing. Start writing that. You write that script. You get it right, we will make that movie. Because I always, when you're a little guy like me in the industry and you can't afford to pay for, the hottest book, to pay for the rights for Harry Potter, to pay for the rights for Hunger Games, only studios can afford those kind of big intellectual properties. or you have to create your own where it's like you're trying to get people. If you notice, most studios only do things that either used to be a movie, they're remakes, or they're based on a big book, or they're based on, you know, a toy. Like,
sure,
they'll do Battleship
they'll do
or
an
whatever,
entire
you know?
movie around like one story of something that's already popular.
Exactly.
You know?
So nobody wants to take risks. So and I get that because it's like you need a built-in audience. So and we can't pay to have huge actors usually. You know, like the budgets we have, we can get some decent actors, some great actors, but like we're not going to get like the #1 star. We're not going to get whoever it is right now.
Sure.
Brad Pitt, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
so we have to find stories that have some inherent worth already. And Little Women it's 150 years old, so the book is in the public domain, so anybody can make it. You right now can go home and make your own Little Women if you want. And that's fine because anybody can do it. So I said, I can't believe no one's done it since 1994. No one's done a modern adaptation, and this is the script she has to write. So she goes to write it. She enlists like a help of another writer she knows, Christy Shimmick, who's a good friend of ours. And about 6 weeks later, actually probably a little less than that, probably 4 weeks later, they already had a draft for me. And I read it, and overall I was like, it's almost there, but I didn't quite get it. So I had to like do my own research, watch the movie, you know, like look into it. And I kind of really started to understand what the appeal of it, because like Little Women, I'd say 9 out of 10 guys have never read it.
Yeah, I mean, I know my sister used to watch the older movie. Like, I think she just re-rented it from Blockbuster every week. I never once.
Yeah.
Never once
so
caught
I
my
didn't
eye
quite
on it.
understand it because it wasn't a part of my childhood. But what I've noticed, girls everywhere love that movie.
Yep.
Love it, and for good reason. It's like an amazing story of 4 sisters. So she took after I kind of did my own rewrite of the script because I just kind of look at it from my producing standpoint and like what I think is going to help narrow our audience. And I'm pretty good with the dialogue, and I'm pretty good with, you know, smoothing things out. So I definitely do a lot of kind of script revisions for people to help make their script just like next level up, you know. So I did that version on this one, and we started sending it out to actors, and got some great responses. We got Leah Thompson. You know, if any of you are fans of Back to the Future, that's like
that's of course
top movie of my childhood.
Yeah.
And she's, you know, she plays Marty's mom in that, and is so great in that. And she was in like Caroline in the City and Switched at Birth. You know, she's been in the business for the last 30 years.
Yeah, for sure.
And she plays the mom, Marmee, in it. And we have some great up and coming actors that are playing the young girls. And then we got like Ian Bowen, who's awesome. He's in the new MTV Teen Wolf. He's playing Freddie Bear, the professor. And Lucas Grabeel from High School Musical plays the Laurie character. So we've got a lot of great kind of like team of actors. And Claire actually, she ended up directing this one. She was so close to the story, and she learned filmmaking from the ground up, from being a peon till now, and she's just, in her early 30s now, and she was like ready to do it. She didn't think she was ready, but I knew she was, so I said, let's have you direct it. There's no one better for it, and she did an amazing job. So
that's phenomenal. When does that one come out?
That one we are kind of shopping around right now to distributors. It turned out really well, so we have a lot of different people interested. So
Cool.
We're trying to find the best home for it.
Got it.
And once you find the best home, then they have to decide when do we want to release it.
Yeah.
So we don't know yet.
But it's done. The film's been made.
But the film is done. We have a screener of it that we're starting to shop around, and I think it's the best movie I've ever produced.
Wow.
Out of the 25 that I've done. There's been some stinkers, but I feel very proud of a lot of ones. You know what
it's
I mean?
great.
Like,
well, and
I think it's overall better than the Saratov Approach. Overall better than Once I Was a Beehive. Overall, it just as a movie as a whole, and the fact that it appeals to such a wide audience. You know. So.
Well, I'm excited. That'll be my sister's going to be excited. She literally used to rent Little Women every week from Blockbuster. It was like that or Three Ninjas or something.
Three Ninjas was good.
Well, I appreciate your time, and this is amazing. I'm so glad that to have our names attached to this one
I'm so
together.
glad.
Once I Was a Beehive,
and he's one of our executive producers on My Brother the Time Traveler.
That's right.
So you gotta go out and check that out.
Yeah,
search it out.
Check it out. It's
send links and whatever.
Yeah, we'll attach some links to this podcast. Will be coming out here pretty soon, and it's exciting stuff, man. I'm excited to see what's next for you as well, and Always make me one of your first calls.
You always are. You always are. So
thanks, my man.
thanks, Jimmy. Love it.